If you show up, we may not open the door. That's what my mother said to me 3 days before Christmas. Anger, not with heat. Just that slow, low voice she uses when she wants to sound reasonable, when she wants to hurt you and pretend she didn't. It was nearly midnight in Asheville. I had just walked home through the sleet, my navy scrubs damp at the cuffs, breath still fogging the air. My one-bedroom apartment smelled faintly of pine and peppermint. I had plugged in my little thrift store tree that morning, the same one I'd kept since nursing school, now blinking quietly in the corner. A suitcase sat by the door. Packed days ago, like always, with small thoughtful things I never forgot. The blood orange marmalade Dad liked with his toast, the lavender balm Mom used on her joints. A jigsaw puzzle for Daniel's girlfriend Tessa, who once mentioned loving coastal landscapes, all tied with ribbon and hope. My hands were still shaking from the cold when the phone rang. I smiled automatically when Daniel's name lit up. "Hey, big brother," I said, kicking off my shoes. He hesitated. "Elise," he began, already gentle, already too careful. "So, Tessa's coming to Christmas this year." I blinked. "Okay. She's been working on emotional boundaries lately. Energy stuff. And, well, with your job at the hospice, that energy, it's a lot for her sometimes." He cleared his throat. "So we were thinking, maybe this year you could just take a break." My fingers gripped the phone harder. "You understand, right?" He said quickly. "It's nothing personal." I was about to speak when the other line buzzed. "My mother," I answered. Her voice arrived in that warm, clipped tone she uses when she's wrapping poison in cellophane. "Elise, sweetheart," she said, "we just want peace this year. You know how sensitive Tessa is. If you show up, it could create tension. Honestly, if you come to the house, we may not open the door." I stood there in the dark, the blinking lights of the tree reflecting off the window. My body didn't move, my lips didn't part. The words weren't shocking, just final. They weren't angry, they were done. And I understood something then. I had never been invited. I had just never been told not to come. I ended the call, sat down on the edge of my couch, looked at the gifts, each one wrapped with hands that had washed the dying just hours before. Each one prepared for people who no longer saw me as someone to include, only someone to avoid. And for the first time, I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't ask why. Instead, I listened to the silence. A silence I had spent years filling for other people. A silence that had never been mine. I reached for the one thing in my apartment that had always obeyed me. My laptop. I didn't open my laptop out of spite. I opened it out of instinct. The screen lit up with the same dull warmth as always, humming gently against the quiet. My hands moved without thinking. First tab banking, second payments, third family folder. The first thing I canceled was the monthly transfer I'd been sending to Daniel, $800 quietly deposited into his creative development fund. Ever since he'd left his last full-time job to focus on storytelling, I never asked questions. I never wanted him to feel small. Next, my parents' mortgage. I had set up the auto-pay 5 years ago after Dad missed 2 property tax notices. I'd told myself it was temporary. It never was. That $1 $400 went out every month, like clockwork. I stopped it with 2 clicks. Insurance, the pickup truck I had helped co-sign when the rates got too high. Dental coverage. The second line on my cell phone plan labeled Dad, all of it severed quietly, neatly, not revenge, just release. I sat back, letting the stillness stretch. A candle flickered beside me, the wax slumped into the glass like a body too tired to hold shape. I remembered that feeling. I'd lived inside it for years. Growing up, I was always the dependable one, the steady daughter, the emotional sponge. I knew how to make casseroles and keep quiet. I knew how to talk gently to someone unraveling. I knew how to step aside, how to not be too loud, too strange, too anything. Daniel was the wild one, the artist, the golden son with mismatched socks and clever excuses. He crashed his car once and got a second chance speech from Dad. I dropped a glass in the sink and got the silent treatment for a week. When I got into nursing school, Mom said, "That's nice, honey, just don't let it turn you into someone cold." When I graduated top of my class, she sent a text, thumbs up. When Daniel released a 3-episode podcast about dreams, they hosted a listening party with wine and rosemary focaccia. I once found one of my old hospice journals tucked under their recycling bin, half covered in coupon mailers. No one had opened it. No one had asked. Still, I kept showing up. I drove home every Christmas with pies I baked myself. I repaired broken faucets, changed light bulbs, refilled prescriptions, refolded their shame. I never asked to be thanked, but I suppose I did hope quietly to be noticed. But I wasn't the story they told at parties. I was the quiet one, the background one, the one who held the camera so others could be in the photo. And when they asked me not to come this year, not angrily but softly, like a formality, I realized something sharp and heavy. I had never really been invited to that table. I had just kept pulling up my own chair and hoping no one would notice I closed the laptop. Let the room settle around me. Somewhere across town, they were probably folding napkins and wrapping matching sweaters, preparing a holiday designed to look whole with me. Carefully edited out of the frame, I didn't erase myself. I just finally stopped arguing with the people who had already done it for me. The next morning, I made tea. Cinnamon apple, the kind they always asked for when they came to visit. I let it steep too long, then drank it anyway. The tree in the corner blinked softly in the morning light. I didn't turn it off. I just sat with it like a guest in someone else's apartment. I reached for my notebook. Not the leather-bound one I kept for work, but the spiral one I always meant to throw out. On the first page, I made a list, debts I never asked to be paid back. I wrote them slowly. Daniel's broken laptop replaced with my own bonus, the vet bill when Mom's cat swallowed a ribbon, the time I paid their water bill without being asked because the pipes had already frozen, a plane ticket, a new mattress, a dental crown, a tire rotation. Some of the entries were so small they looked almost silly. Others startled me, not because I'd forgotten them, but because I hadn't realized they belonged on a list I wasn't keeping score. I was keeping record, not to throw it back, but to finally see it for what it was. When the list reached the bottom of the page, I closed the notebook and placed it gently into the freezer. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to preserve the evidence. Or maybe I just liked the thought of it sitting beside the frozen peas, getting colder and colder, while I finally got warm. That night, I unplugged the Christmas lights, not out of sadness, but because I didn't want them blinking at me like questions I no longer had to answer. The wrapped gifts went into the hall closet. Not hidden, just shelved. I might donate them. I might not. Right now, I just didn't want them watching me. I didn't text anyone. I didn't post online. I didn't write a long message about boundaries or betrayal. That wasn't my language. Instead, I filled out a form to remove my name from the shared cell phone plan. I mailed a check to myself for the exact amount of the canceled auto payments, not to cash, just to hold, just to remind myself I could. Then I made dinner. 2 eggs, spinach toast. I ate it slowly while snow pressed against the window like it was trying to get in. For so long, I'd believed love meant covering the cracks, fixing the leaks, making things feel okay. Now I understood maybe too late that some houses aren't meant to be repaired. Some houses are just meant to be left behind. I wasn't angry. Not exactly, but there was something steady rising inside me. Not fire, not even cold, just clearness. Like finally stepping into a room and realizing the door has always been open. I just kept asking for permission to walk through it. They had chosen comfort over connection, appearances over presence, simplicity over truth. I had played along for years, mistaking tolerance for belonging, but now the performance was over. They would gather without me, share meals, take photos, light candles, tell the same stories. They would forget to mention me or mention me carefully with vague regret and tight smiles. She's doing her own thing, they'd say. Work keeps her busy. They wouldn't say they asked me not to come. They wouldn't say they erased me, but this time, I wasn't the one who would keep that secret. I didn't need to confront them. I didn't need to prove anything, because the truth was already doing its quiet work, and soon it would reach them the way winter does. Soft, certain, unstoppable. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't send an excuse or a quiet apology wrapped in a Hallmark card. I simply didn't go, and for the first time, no one followed up. No, where are you? No, hope, everything's okay. Just silence, polished and practiced. On Christmas morning, I stayed in bed longer than usual. The light outside was soft and gray, the kind that makes the whole street look like it's holding its breath. My phone stayed quiet. I didn't check it. I made oatmeal, added nutmeg and brown sugar. The kitchen felt larger than usual. Later, I sat by the window with a blanket across my knees. No Christmas playlist, no soft choral voices trying to patch things over. Just the hum of my radiator and the distant echo of someone scraping ice off a windshield down the block. It was peaceful, not lonely, just still. That afternoon, I opened a novel I'd started 3 times, but never finished. Got halfway through, made tea, folded laundry, reclaimed every small thing I used to rush through. I didn't think about the party. Not until my phone buzzed. First once, then again, then a third time, I ignored it. I'd muted every group thread weeks ago. But then a message came through separate from the rest. Elise, can you answer? You've done enough damage already. It was from Tessa. Her name pulled something loose in my chest. I called her back. My voice was rough with disuse. What happened? She hesitated. They're saying you ruined Christmas, she said gently. But Elise, you weren't even there. Then slowly, like someone untangling a wire, she told me what happened. Sometime after dinner, Tessa had wandered into the den, a glass of wine in hand, and started admiring the framed photos lining the mantel. She paused at one, a faded picture of Daniel's 5th birthday. Balloons, a homemade cake. A tiny girl in a blue dress, laughing too hard for the camera to catch her face clearly. "That's you, right?" she'd asked. No one answered. She pointed again. "Elise, your sister. The one who sat with my neighbor when she was dying." Daniel went pale. Mom's smile froze like a wax figure. Someone dropped a fork. Tessa looked around. "Wait, is that the same Elise you said was too intense to be around for the holidays?" Still no answer, but the silence was louder than anything they could have said. Tessa excused herself, gathered her coat, and left early. Later that night, she posted something. Just a few lines. No names, no blame, just truth. Sometimes families rewrite the people who hold them together. They call their grief heavy, their love inconvenient, and their absence disruptive. By morning, mutual friends had seen it. Cousins, colleagues, even a former neighbor commented, "Wait, is this about your sister?" The nurse, "I didn't even know you had one." The carefully curated version of the Monroe family, warm, united, generous, began to fracture. Quietly, like a hairline crack in a wine glass. Tessa's words didn't attack. They simply told the truth, and the truth did what it always does. It made the silence harder to maintain. That night, I didn't sleep right away. I sat by the window with the lights off, watching the wind push snow down the street in slow, whispering gusts. They had spent years pretending my presence was optional. Now, for the first time, they were learning how loud absence can be. The first email came the next morning. Subject line, "Let's reset things." No greeting, no apology. Just a string of carefully worded sentences that read like a corporate memo. Emotions were high. "We value family. It's important to move forward." But buried halfway down between lines about holiday stress and miscommunication came the real reason. "Would you be willing to reach out to Tessa?" Just to clarify. Things got misrepresented. Not because they missed me, not because they understood, but because Daniel's girlfriend had become unpredictable and they needed the mess cleaned up. I didn't reply. The second message came that evening, from Dad Shorter, less polished. "We heard what Tessa posted. It's affecting people. Your brother's having trouble at work. Can we please keep this within the family?" Keep what exactly? The truth that I existed, that I'd spent a decade wiring money in silence so they could keep pretending I didn't. That night, the doorbell rang. 3 slow chimes. No knock. Just a long, familiar silence hovering on the other side. I didn't move at first, just listened. When I finally stood and looked through the peephole, I wasn't surprised. My parents, Daniel, standing there in their nicest coats looking like a Norman Rockwell painting dipped in unease. Dad held a tin of cookies. Mom clutched her purse like it was a script. Daniel stood with his hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on the floor. I opened the door just an inch, enough for the cold to slip in and sting my skin. "Sweetheart," my mother began, her voice trembling with artificial warmth. "We just want to talk?" I didn't respond. Dad cleared his throat. We think this has all gotten out of hand. You've made your point. I tilted my head. Daniel finally looked up. You didn't have to go nuclear. Elise, I kept my voice low. I didn't say anything. They blinked. I opened the door just wide enough to step forward, not out but closer so they could hear me clearly. You spent years pretending I wasn't part of this family. You made it official this year. Mom opened her mouth. We didn't mean, I raised a hand. Not in anger, just to stop the noise. I'm not here for a scene, I said. I'm not angry. That part was true. I wasn't angry. I was done. I stepped back inside and gave them the only word I had left. No. Then I closed the door. Not a slam, not a statement, just a quiet final boundary. They stood out there for another minute, voices rising then dipping. I didn't listen. I walked back to my chair, sat down and picked up my tea, now cold. On the table beside me was the note I had written weeks earlier, folded and forgotten. Not a manifesto, not a letter. Just 3 lines I had scribbled to remind myself. You are not invisible. You are not responsible for their comfort. You do not owe them silence. Outside, the porch light flickered once, then steadied. Through the curtain, I watched as they turned and walked back to their car. They hadn't come to make peace. They had come to preserve the lie. But this time, I wasn't part of the cast. They didn't come back the next day. No more emails, no more texts. Just the strange hovering quiet of people recalibrating their narrative. I wasn't angry. I wasn't proud. Mostly, I was tired in that deep, quiet way your body feels after surviving something long and invisible. I started making space in my apartment. Not cleaning, just clearing. I put the Christmas gifts in a donation box, slid the suitcase back into the closet, dusted off the letter from Tessa still propped against the lamp. I read it again slowly. You didn't just sit with my grandmother when no one else did. You reminded her she mattered. You reminded me too. I didn't cry, but I did close my eyes and let the words land where no one had spoken to me in years, like I was someone real, not someone necessary. That afternoon, I framed the letter, hung it above my desk just beside the window where light moved across the wall like water. I didn't post anything, didn't text back. Cousins who suddenly wanted to reconnect. I let the silence grow. Not as punishment, but as reclamation. I wasn't hiding. I just wasn't performing anymore. A week later, a final message arrived. We miss you. We didn't mean to hurt you. Can we start over? And then, beneath it, the true purpose. Tessa still hasn't taken the post down. It's affecting Daniel's opportunities. That was all I needed to see. I closed the message, blocked the address, then shut the laptop with both hands. Not in anger, but like closing the back cover of a book I no longer needed to reread. That night, I lit a candle and sat on the floor with a mug of tea. Strong, hot, unshared. Snow was falling outside again, slow and steady. No storm this time, just silence in motion. I thought about all the years I had tried to be small enough to fit into the spaces they gave me. About all the versions of myself I had edited down to keep the peace, and how peace had never actually existed, only performance. They hadn't come to see me that day. They came for the version of me who still believed love was earned through disappearing. But that girl was gone, and in her place was someone who had finally stepped out of the frame. Not to scream, not to destroy, just to exist fully without asking permission. As I finished my tea, I looked around the room, still undecorated, still quiet. But for the first time, it didn't feel empty, it felt whole. My phone buzzed again. A notification from the hospice. A new patient had requested me by name. Someone remembered. Someone knew. I smiled soft private and reached for my coat. Outside, the world was white and quiet. Inside, I was still. And as I pulled the door closed behind me, I whispered the truth to no one but myself. I didn't vanish. They just built their holidays on the lie that I was never there.